5 years ago, he looked me in the eyes and said something I thought only existed in movies. If we ever lose touch, if life takes us in different directions, promise me one thing. Meet me here again in 5 years. Same place. Same time. At that moment I laughed. It sounded like something out of a fairy tale. A promise too fragile to survive reality. But something in his voice, the way his hands trembled slightly as he spoke, made me take it seriously. That cafe had always been ours. Hidden on a quiet street with dim lights, old jazz music playing, and a smell of roasted coffee beans that lingered in the air like a memory. We'd met there by accident one rainy afternoon, when both of us were strangers looking for shelter. He was sketching on a napkin. I was reading a book. And somehow, two people who had no reason to talk just did. From that day on, the cafe became our little world. We talked about everything. Dreams, fears, the things we never told anyone else. He was a photographer, chasing the world one frame at a time. I was trying to figure out what I wanted from life, still lost in the maze of my 20s. We weren't perfect. We fought, misunderstood each other, and sometimes went silent for days. But there was always this connection, something deep and unexplainable, like our hearts understood each other even when words failed. When he got the offer to move abroad for work, I pretended to be happy for him. But deep down I was terrified. I knew what distance could do to love. I'd seen it before. Promises fade, calls get shorter, messages get colder. So when he made that 5-year promise, I smiled through tears and said yes. Same cafe. 5 years from now. We hugged for a long time, as if trying to memorize each other's heartbeat. And then he left. For the first few months we tried. Calls every night. Long emails. Random pictures from the cities he visited. But life has a way of getting in between even the strongest connections. His projects grew bigger, his travels more frequent. I started working longer hours, chasing stability. Slowly the silence grew. I remember the day I realized we hadn't talked in over 3 months. I stared at my phone, scrolling through old messages, laughing and crying at the same time. He wasn't gone, but he wasn't here either. And that hurt more than I expected. Time moved forward. Seasons changed. The cafe stayed the same, though I stopped going there. I couldn't sit at that same table without feeling like something was missing. But I never forgot the promise. It became this quiet memory in the back of my mind. Something I'd think about when I couldn't sleep. I'd wonder, would he remember? Would he actually show up after 5 long years? As time passed, my life changed in ways I didn't expect. I moved to another city, got a new job, met people who taught me different kinds of love, friendship, kindness, resilience. I started taking pictures again, inspired by the way he used to see the world. There were nights I wanted to call him just to say, "Hey, I still remember you." But pride held me back. Maybe fear too. What if he'd forgotten? What if I was the only one still holding on to a ghost? I tried to convince myself that what we had was beautiful because it ended. Some stories aren't meant to last. They're meant to change us. That's what I kept telling myself. But every year, as the date got closer, my heart would ache a little more. By the 4th year, I stopped pretending I didn't care. I found myself counting months, then weeks. I even visited the cafe's website to see if it was still open. It was. Somehow that gave me comfort. Like a sign. 5 years later, the day finally arrived. I woke up early that morning, unable to shake the feeling that something important was about to happen. I stood in front of my mirror, wondering what I should wear. Silly, I know, but part of me wanted to look like the version of me he remembered. I chose a simple beige dress, the kind he always said made me look soft and calm. I tied my hair the way I used to. As I got ready, memories came rushing back, his laugh, his way of looking at me as if the world disappeared around us. The weather was almost the same as that day 5 years ago. Cloudy with a gentle drizzle. The city felt quieter than usual. Every step toward that cafe made my heart beat faster. When I reached the corner, I stopped. The cafe looked exactly the same. Same sign, same soft glow through the windows. But I hesitated at the door. What if he wasn't there? What if he'd moved on, forgotten everything? I took a deep breath and walked in. The bell above the door chimed softly, and the smell of coffee wrapped around me like an old memory. My eyes scanned the room. Couples chatting, people working on laptops, the same old barista behind the counter. But not him. I chose our table, the one by the window. The seat where he used to sit was empty. I smiled sadly and ordered a cappuccino. Minutes passed. Then half an hour. Then an hour. I kept glancing at the door, pretending to check my phone, pretending not to care. But my chest felt heavy. I told myself maybe he forgot. Maybe life had taken him too far away. I looked outside. Raindrops slid down the glass like tears. A couple walked by under a shared umbrella, laughing. For a moment I thought about leaving. But something made me stay. I don't know what it was, maybe hope, maybe stubbornness. Or maybe a small part of me that still believed in promises. Another hour passed. My coffee was cold. My heart was numb. I finally stood up ready to go. And that's when I heard the bell ring again. I turned around and there he was. He looked different. Older maybe, but in the most beautiful way. His hair was a bit longer, his jawline more defined, and there was this calmness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. For a second I couldn't move. I just stared, as if my brain couldn't catch up with what my eyes were seeing. He smiled, that same smile that had haunted my dreams for years. "You waited," he said softly. And before I could even answer, tears filled my eyes. He walked closer, his steps slow, uncertain. Like he was afraid I might disappear if he blinked. "I wasn't sure if you'd remember," I whispered. He laughed, shaking his head. "I could never forget." We stood there, two people frozen in time, surrounded by the smell of coffee and the hum of quiet conversations. The world around us blurred. He reached out and touched my hand. It was warm, real. "I kept my promise," he said, even when I wasn't sure I could. I sat down, still trying to believe he was actually there. He told me how life had been hard, how he'd lost his job for a while, how he'd moved from country to country trying to find purpose. He said the one thing that kept him going was the thought of this day. I told myself, no matter what happens, I'll find my way back to that cafe. I couldn't stop smiling, or crying, or both. It felt surreal, like the universe had bent time just to let this moment happen. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick with everything we wanted to say but didn't know how. He kept looking at me as if trying to memorize every detail, the same way he did that last day 5 years ago. I could see it in his eyes, a mixture of disbelief and relief, like he'd been holding his breath all this time and could finally exhale. "I thought you wouldn't come," I finally said, my voice trembling slightly. He smiled softly. "I thought the same about you, but I told myself even if there's just a 1% chance I'd be here." I couldn't break that promise. Something about the way he said it made my heart ache. Because suddenly all those years apart, all the unanswered questions and the what-ifs, they didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that we were here. Now, together. We sat down. For a while we just stared at each other, like strangers rediscovering a language they once spoke fluently. The barista, the same one from years ago, recognized us. He smiled knowingly and brought over 2 cappuccinos without even asking. "It's been a while," he said, setting them down. I laughed softly, unable to believe how full circle everything had come. As I watched the foam swirl in my cup, I realized how much had changed, in him, in me, and everything around us. We weren't those naive dreamers anymore. Life had tested us, shaped us, maybe even broken us a little. But the essence, the connection we once had, it was still there, quietly breathing beneath the surface. "So," I said, breaking the silence, "how was your 5 years?" He leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Messy, beautiful, exhausting. I chased everything I thought I wanted: success, recognition, travel. But somewhere along the way I realized none of it felt complete. I'd see a sunset in another country, and for some reason I'd think of you. I started taking photos of empty chairs, coffee cups, train windows, as if I was saving a seat for someone who wasn't there." His words hit me like a wave. I didn't expect that kind of honesty. He smiled faintly, almost embarrassed. "I guess I never really moved on," he said. I wanted to respond, but my throat tightened, because deep down I knew exactly what he meant. I had lived an entire life, new people, new places, but somehow he'd always been there in the quiet moments. When I saw someone laughing the way he used to, when I heard a song that reminded me of us. It wasn't that I was waiting, but part of me never truly closed that chapter. "You know," I finally said, "I almost didn't come today. I told myself it was silly, that we were different people now, that maybe it was just nostalgia. But then I woke up this morning, and something inside me just told me I had to. He looked down, smiling softly. I'm glad you did. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, about how life had humbled us, how we learned that happiness doesn't always come in the ways we expect. There was no awkwardness, no tension, just two souls reconnecting where they left off. At one point it started to rain harder. The sound of it against the window filled the silence. He took out his camera, the same one he'd carried all those years ago. Can I take your picture? He asked gently. I laughed. After all this time, that's still your instinct? He shrugged. Some things never change. He lifted the camera, and for a brief moment, it felt like time folded in on itself. Just like that first day we met, him behind the lens, me smiling shyly. The click of the shutter echoed softly. Perfect, he murmured. We stayed until the cafe began to close. The light dimmed, the crowd thinned, and the world outside glowed under the rain. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to lose the moment again. When we finally stepped outside, the city smelled like wet pavement and nostalgia. The rain had softened into a drizzle. He opened his umbrella, the same old-fashioned black one he always carried. Still hate getting wet, he teased. I smiled. Some things never change. We walked in silence for a while, our steps in rhythm. The streets were quiet, the world around us calm, as if it knew not to interrupt. After a while he stopped walking. I need to tell you something, he said. His tone shifted, serious but gentle. The reason I left wasn't just the job. I was scared. Scared that I wasn't enough for you back then. You had all this light in you, and I didn't know how to hold it without dimming it. I looked at him, stunned. He continued. I thought maybe if I went out there, became someone better, I'd be worthy of coming back. That's why I made that promise. Not just to you, but to myself. Tears welled up in my eyes before I could stop them. I shook my head. You were already enough. You always were. He smiled sadly. Maybe, but I needed time to believe that. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The rain tapped softly on the umbrella, the world moving slowly around us. Then, without thinking, I stepped closer and hugged him. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic. It was real. The kind of hug that says everything words can't. I could feel his heartbeat against mine, steady and familiar. Felt like coming home. We stood there for what felt like forever. When we finally pulled back, he whispered, So what happens now? I looked up at him and smiled. Maybe we stop running from what's always been meant to be. He laughed softly, and that sound, that laugh, was enough to make every year of waiting worth it. We walked again, this time toward the river. The city lights reflected on the water, shimmering like memories. We talked about our dreams, not the big, unrealistic ones, but the quiet ones, the kind that matter. He told me he wanted to open a small gallery someday, filled with the photographs he took while searching for meaning. I told him I wanted to write again, maybe turn my experiences into stories that could help people believe in love again. He looked at me and said, You already do, just by being here. That moment, those words stayed with me. Weeks turned into months and we started meeting often. Sometimes at that same cafe, sometimes at new places. We didn't rush anything. We just allowed life to happen. It was different this time. Calmer. Real. There was no fear of losing each other because we'd already done that once. And found our way back. He started taking photos for local magazines and I began writing again. It felt like we were both rebuilding ourselves, not as who we were 5 years ago, but as who we became because of it. One evening, he invited me to the opening of his first solo photography exhibition. The walls were lined with pictures from his travels. Deserts, mountains, cities, faces. But in the very center of the gallery hung one photo, the one he took of me in the cafe that day. Underneath it, a small handwritten note said, 5 years later. She showed up. When I read it, my heart melted. I turned to look at him, and he was already watching me with that same quiet smile. You made it all happen, I whispered. He shook his head. No, you kept believing. And I realized he was right. Sometimes it's not about how hard we hold on, but about believing that what's meant for us will find its way back. That night, as the gallery emptied and the city lights flickered outside, he took my hand and said, I don't want to wait another 5 years to make another promise. I laughed softly. What kind of promise this time? He smiled. The kind I plan to keep every day. He pulled out a small box, simple, elegant. Inside was a ring, delicate and beautiful. I gasped softly, tears filling my eyes before he even said a word. I don't need grand speeches, he said quietly. Just this, will you keep walking beside me, for all the years we've yet to live? I couldn't speak. I just nodded, and in that moment everything, every ache, every doubt, every lonely night made sense. Because they led me right back to him. We didn't promise perfection. We promised presence. And as he slipped the ring onto my finger, I knew that love isn't about keeping every word we say. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. That cafe became our story's beginning and end. The place where promises were made, lost, and found again. Sometimes when we sit there now watching new couples walk in, I smile and wonder if they'll ever make a promise of their own. Maybe one that will change their lives the way ours did. Because the truth is, love doesn't fade with distance or time. Real love waits, grows, and returns when both hearts are ready to receive it. If you had told me 5 years ago that he'd actually show up, I would have laughed. But now, sitting across from him, sipping coffee in the same cafe where it all began, I understand. Some promises are not made to be tested. They're made to remind us that love always finds its way home. Life took us far apart, but destiny brought us back. Not as who we were, but as who we needed to become. And as I look at him now, smiling softly across the table, I know, this time we're here to stay.